Namaste and welcome to the Vichar Manthan podcast. My name is Sumit Sharma and it's my great privilege to be hosting this project. If you haven't tuned in to any of the previous episodes, you can find us on Spotify and all your favorite streaming platforms. The VM podcast is a Vichar Manthan project looking to explore modern day issues through a dharmic lens in hopefully a relaxed and engaging manner. I'm quite excited today to bring back Divya Prabha to the podcast. Divya ji has been on the Vichar Manthan platform before. We have recorded a live session actually a few years ago. And Divya Prabha is the founder of the International Chandramauli Charitable Trust. She was born in the UK, did her BA and her MA from Oxford, and she used to work for a top American investment bank. And I think today we're going to find a little bit about why and where someone who travels in these circles, works at a top investment bank, is now not doing that, is doing something vastly different. Divya ji, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me here. It's really great to be back with you.
Thank you. And so we met a few years ago at Weddings versus Marriages, a VM that I hosted in London live pre-COVID. And I think we had a lot to uncover. And at the time I wasn't married and now I am. So there may be a new podcast that we might need to record as a result.
Look forward to that. That's for sure.
So Divya ji, let's start at the beginning. So I think you've got quite an interesting life and a story to tell. So we're going to try and uncover that today for some of our listeners. Let's rewind. Let's go back in history. Let's find out what Divya ji as a young child was like. What was childhood? What was schooling? What were the things that fascinated you?
I was always fascinated to learn about everything. I was very, very inquisitive from the earliest of times. And I remember that as a 4-year-old, my grandparents used to like to take me to all of their friends' houses and all of the things that they used to go to. And apparently I used to talk a lot as a four-year-old in a very engaging way, no idea what I was talking about. And then at the other end of the spectrum, life was growing up in the countryside in a world very different from today in terms of on my bicycle riding down country little lanes just with a group of friends and a lot of freedom, those English summers that everybody gets to enjoy were really led to a very magical, innocent existence, with things like playing the famous 5 in little sheds and things like that. But at the same time, life felt very ethereal in a sense. I had the sense of unlimitedness, even at the earliest of ages. And my mother and my parents were, I wouldn't say alternative, but they were maybe not as mainstream as many parents can be. And so there was a lot of possibilities to explore, and they indulged all of my creativity and my inquisitiveness and schooling as well. They gave me every opportunity in terms of education and sport as well. My father and grandparents were like mad on sport.
What was your favorite sport then?
Oh, tennis, skiing, and hockey probably would be my. It'd be difficult to choose between the 3 of those.
Awesome. And do you still play?
Not anymore. I haven't played for a long time now. Actually, once I started doing yoga practices in terms of the postures and pranayama and meditation, I never looked back at any of the other sport. I found that I was actually much stronger during yoga than I ever was doing sport. And at university, we used to train up to 3 hours a day because I played 5 sports at a university level. So it was very, very serious. And then discovering yoga and discovering that I was way stronger doing yoga than I ever was doing all that.
I think yoga's, obviously it's fundamental to a lot of things, but a lot of the Olympic teams and serious sports stars out there now swear by yoga and, well, I should say yogic physical activities and pranayams. Yoga is an entire body outside of that.
I mean, pranayama, I would say, is a key training tool for physical sports people as well, and not to be underestimated. I mean, if you think about tennis players, when they're playing at US Open and Wimbledon levels, the serve is moving faster than you are able to see. And so
That's
what
incredible.
is it that enables them to see that? And it's meditation.
Wow.
Otherwise, how can they receive the ball? It's that meditation really is that concentration, that one pointedness. And that is what enables them to be aware of where that ball's coming.
Amazing.
Tuning into it.
Being in touch almost with the fabric of nature. I don't know, sounds a bit esoteric, but definitely, and that's a life science, a life skill you could apply to any sphere of life, not just tennis.
Absolutely.
But I imagine you could go skiing on the Kashi Mountains, right? That would be right on your doorstep.
Could probably.
So lots of sports. Is there a moment in your childhood where you remember being particularly adamant or together about believing in something?
Oh yeah, I mean, from the earliest of ages, I was questioning things, and I remember, I mean, at 8, there was only so much you could question at that little small body size. But at 13, there's a particular incident at boarding school where I was at a Catholic boarding school, and we were being given weekly lessons about how to make decisions. And one of the things that was brought up was doing confirmation, which anyone who's looked at Christianity knows that that's kind of like an important thing they do, a bit like a sanskar kind of thing. And in confirmation, they promise for life to be a Christian. And so in that topic, they brought up talking about sin. And they were telling us that if you don't go to church on Sunday, it's a sin. So me being me, put up my hand and said, well, what about if you couldn't go on Sunday and you went on Tuesday, is that still a sin? And they answered yes.
Okay.
And you
didn't like that?
Not at all. I started telling them these are man-made rules. There's no way that God could say that you couldn't go on Sunday and you went on Tuesday and still that's a sin. I said, I don't need your rules. I've got God inside me. And I know the difference between right and wrong. What you're telling here isn't needed by me. And I said some more things as well. And it led to my parents being called to school, who were terrified about what I had done, because, when you're a fee-paying school, the last thing your parents want is you to be expelled, right?
Of course.
And so they thought that I was...
What would society say, hey?
Exactly, that's the big problem. And also, I think the financial pressure, now that I'm an adult, I understand the financial pressure that would have put my father under, because he lived very simply to put us through school. And what happened when they came in was that my house mistress had been at some point the Pope's driver.
Oh, wow.
And she was an elderly lady, and she was sitting with her hands like, on top of each other, and very earnestly telling my parents that I'd done something very, very serious. So my mother's sitting there thinking, oh my God, what's she done? And Lucy's refusing to be confirmed. And my mother lost it.
Oh dear.
She said, is that what you've called us here for?
Oh no.
My daughter doesn't want to get confirmed. If she doesn't want to get confirmed, that's fine by me. If this isn't her path, she'll find her own path. I know that my daughter's, a good person, and she'll find her own way. It's not a big deal to me if she doesn't want to get confirmed. And so then the negotiations opened about what they would do with me.
Oh dear.
Whether I could stay at school or not stay at school.
It's amazing to hear, mother being so supportive. I've had similar situations where I've been in trouble at school, and And my mum stepped in, and in fact, I probably owe my mum a whole great deal. At one point they didn't want to let me continue doing IT. I can't remember why. I'm sure I got the grades, and mum came in and was like, "No, like this is his future." And here I am, years later, a senior IT consultant. So yeah, I think we all owe our mums a great deal, even if we're unable to
Absolutely.
recognize.
They're our first teacher. You know, and they where there may be bumpy parts along the way, they are our mothers. You know, and they do know us very well. But it's quite surprising to me that you could get into trouble at school, I have to say.
Really? Oh man, I better not tell any more. There's a whole bunch of stories where that came from. But we're focusing on you today, Divya ji, and uncovering what your life has entailed. So let's move past schooling. So after university, so you went to Oxford. What did you study there?
It's the science of materials and metallurgy.
Okay. And where did that lead you on to?
That took me into the city, actually, because when I was doing a research project at a big multinational, I realized that I was the only person reading the newspaper in the library, and this concerned me because since the earliest parts of my life, I'd always been fascinated by everything, wanting to know everything about everything and asking everybody about everything. And that's how I even got into Oxford, by reading an article in the Scientist and just contacting the professor at Oxford saying, I really want to know about this.
Oh, wow.
So doing this research project, I realized that whilst the research itself was fascinating, it didn't give me that sense of completeness and fulfillment, which is what I had been searching for since the earliest of times. So that's what spurred me on academically. That's what spurred me on in competitive sport. It was always looking for that time then I'd feel fulfilled inside, which just never came. Every time you climbed a mountain, there was another bigger mountain. And I think I realized that once I was working in the city. The first few years were amazing in terms of the kind of environment I was in and the exposure to so many and different aspects of the world. But there came a point in time that I realized that I had everything in my hands, but I felt so empty. Not because I was a soulless person, but because I just wasn't finding that thing. I was always looking for that thing that was going to answer my inner questions. And for many years, I'd been involved with, alternative medicines and the more esoteric aspects of life, which now you would call them, I guess, new age, but that wasn't a thing then, because we're talking about the early 90s.
I think labels change as generations go on, but this quest, this thing that you were looking for, do you think most people go through that? Are they all searching?
I think ultimately we are all searching. We just don't know what we're searching for. And so it's awareness comes through like peeling off those layers, like peeling off onion skins and then revealing a newer and a fresher until you get to the very core. And I think that it's just, it may not be in this life that you reach the ultimate answer, but we're all looking for peace and happiness.
That's true.
And initially we look in the external means for that. And there comes a point, maybe in one life or another, that there's a realization that there's no end to the desires externally. And so maybe the answer is somewhere else.
That's very well
yes,
put.
I think everybody's searching.
Everybody's searching. And so I think just something you said there, like the external validations and materialism and all these things can creep in and maybe even pacify you for a length of time, or for some people a lifetime. And you were very successful in the city and earned lots of money, but realized that wealth wasn't what you were searching for.
Yeah, I just realized one part was that I realized that no amount of money was going to satisfy my worldly desires.
Sure.
And I realized the emptiness of it all, because I had reached at a young, compared to my peer group, I had really sprinted through my career. And, I was one of the first people in the city to work at an American investment bank that wasn't an MBA.
Wow.
It was our year that was the very first that got to do that. And so I really was able to fast forward my career. At 26, I was a VP that wasn't common then.
Yeah, I don't think it's common now anymore, but I mean, surely that's all changed. So what about like outside of this work life? What was your search? What was your quest like? Were you part of groups or classes, or were there people you'd heard of that you wanted to know more about? What was the spiritual life of a young Divya Prabha?
I wasn't in any groups at that point. I was moving in a circle of healers, of esoteric healers, you can say, but in an unofficial capacity in the way that we met up. And it was only later, when I had actually finished my career and that I was just aware that I had to do something else with my life, that the big change came, that someone said, well, why don't you come to my meditation group, and then maybe you'll be happy with the words.
Interesting.
They used. And that is really what transformed everything for me. Everything, in hindsight, it all looks so clear, the path.
And rosy.
But at that time, yeah, but at that time, it seemed to be accidental and coincidental.
Like the universe conspired to line these opportunities up in front of you.
Yeah, I mean, really, if I look back at my life now, from the moment of birth, it all seems to be so clear where I was going. And recently, when I say recently, I remember about 10 years ago, one of my high school friends said to me, if only we had known at school that this is what you were going to do and be like, things would have been so different, in terms of the way we all engaged. But they said, we realized there was something different about you.
Your friends and peers knew you were, you had a little light shining inside of you.
Well, we all do. That's the thing. We all do.
True.
And that's what people in the difficult times forget and become unaware of. And once you become aware of that, then that sense of being lost or directionless is over, because you know that you're always in the right place at the right time, doing the right things. And that's one of the big things that troubles people in life, is trying to be something else in somewhere else, doing something else.
You're in the right place all the time. You just, there's a lot of wisdom in the last couple of sentences there, I think we can unlock. So for all the listeners at home, if you're stuck in a rut, if you're not sure where you are in life, if there is something you are looking for, what do we say? We're going to say, look internally, that little light inside of you, let it shine, do the right things, follow your dharma, and I think we're very sure that the universe will conspire to help you.
Absolutely. I have complete and utter faith in that, through my own life experiences, that it's always with you.
Very nice. So you said there that you ended your career. What does that mean? How did you do that? And where did you end up?
Well, I was at an investment bank that went through 3 mergers in a year. And that involved a huge management change. And I just wasn't happy with that. And I came to an agreement with management, which led to a payment. I thought I had been headhunted by the last of the big four. I'd worked for the other big three.
And this is pre-2000. So there probably weren't a lot of people in your position at this time.
No, I mean, it was companies really competed for you in those days.
Wow.
You know, it was we were you can say like prized commodities at that point in time.
Sure.
But I just didn't feel that it was right. One aspect was that I was being offered a big amount of money, a huge amount of money, actually, more than I could have imagined of or wished for. But I had always had, since I was 8 years old, this awareness that when I was 30, I was going to be doing something completely different, but I didn't know what that was. In fact, the words were that the world would end for me when I was 30, and I didn't know what that meant. And I was now 29 and being offered these big deals. And I realized that I wouldn't be able to pay back their investment by working for them before I was 30. And so I just stayed quiet and retreated into looking for what that thing was that would give me that sense of fulfillment. And when my parents, would say anything, who obviously were very worried, having given me all of this education and I was just sitting at home with it. I just said, I don't know, but God's got some plan for me and I don't know what it is. And I know it's not that. They stayed quiet. They were very good parents on that front.
Fair enough.
I'm just hoping that I'd find my way through, trusting me that I'd find my way through.
Very nice. And so where did you go? Where did you end up? What happens after packing your bags?
Well, in meditation one day, I, for the first time, had that complete and utter sense of completeness, inside and out. And I just knew for the first time that this was the thing that I had been looking for. And having found that, I started going to this meditation group all the time. And friends said, it's like you got addicted to meditation. And I said, I think, I was quite happy to say, yeah, I think I am. Because I thought that this is a good thing to be addicted to, if that's what you're going to call it. And I started following that teacher around, Vigyandev, everywhere he wanted to go. And he said, let's go to Palm Springs in the USA and make a center. And I said, fine, I'll go with you.
Okay.
And then whilst we're there, I at one point said, let's go back to the UK, and met his teacher, Brahmrishi Vishwatma Bhavraji. Okay. And that day, I realized that that was my teacher too in meditation. That led us on to Sri Lanka. In Sri Lanka, there were a couple of things that happened. One is that Vigyandev called Brahmrishi Vishwatma Bhavraji and said, that girl that's traveling with you, she needs to come to India in June.
Okay.
And
the ultimate calling.
Yeah. So Vigyandev said, oh, fine, we'll come to India in June. And we were going to do a 40-day retreat in the Himalayas. And then whilst we were preparing to go to India, one day my mala broke by the guru bead, in that both sides broke suddenly and the guru bead dropped out. Okay. So I went to him feeling this was very inauspicious. I was thinking, oh my God, what's about to happen?
So for anyone that does have a mala bead or anything like that, that will never really happen. One side may break, but both sides, that's pretty, just by the way of construct, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've never heard of it happening at all, ever. And so I was really very shocked by this and went to him weeping, saying, and Guruji, you know, the Gurubins fallen out. And he said very calmly, okay, just put it in the other mala that I gave you underneath the other Gurubin. And I said, but you can't do that. That means there's two gurus.
Oh, dear.
And he said, just do what I told you.
And there'll be 109 beads, right?
Yeah, but I was thinking more about the symbolism of having these two guru beads in the mala. And within a couple of weeks, he actually had passed away.
Oh, wow.
And
it was a sign.
It really was. And so packed up the bags, went back with the body to the UK. When we were there, Brahmarishi Vishwatma Bhavariji was sitting in London, and he said to everybody there, to the whole crowd, that everybody was invited to come and visit India and we could stay there for our whole lives. And when he was saying that, it really felt to me like he was talking to me. You know, it sounds a little bit egotistical, but it really was. I had this experience like there was no one else in the room, even there were hundreds of people in the room. And he said that I'll take care of you for your whole life. And before leaving, I said to him, I'd like to come to India. And he said, how long would you like to come for? And I said, well, I'll get an open ticket for a year and I can get a visa for a year. And I was secretly thinking I'd probably stay 2-3 months and then go on from there.
So you booked a one-way ticket?
Oh, no, I had a return.
Oh, you had a return
ticket. English people weren't allowed an open return.
Open return for 1 year. And how long has it been?
21 years.
You had a 1-year ticket, and here we are 2 decades later, and you're still, and where are you right now? In Rishikesh?
Right now, I'm in the foothills of the Himalayas today, on the road up to Shimla. But, you know, even just a few days after meeting him that day in England, the first night in Haridwar, he said, how long are you going to stay for? And I said, 10 years, and then we'll see. And I thought, 10 years? How can I possibly stay 10 years? I can't even get a visa for 10 years.
Right. But managed to make it happen.
Well, that's all the grace of the divine, really.
Amazing. So, okay, let's, I think we've done a little bit about your past. Let's talk about maybe today. What is it you do in India?
Right now, I'm a PhD student and doing a PhD in Sanskrit grammar, which I'm just about to submit, and then I'll do another PhD or DLit. At the same time, I'm part of a group of us that founded a Gurukul and a charity school and a yoga festival and a yoga school and part of a retreat center as well. So always on the go, you can say, and do a lot of, during COVID, obviously all of the talks are online. Otherwise, a lot of traveling related to talks and study.
Awesome. And for those that maybe don't have Divya Ji on Facebook, I see your updates all the time, pictures of all the children doing various yoga activities and teaching and schooling, which I think is very admirable, right? If just from an outsider perspective, seeing, you know, you worked in the city in London, earned lots of money, and now you wear a white sari and teach kids yoga and philosophy and all things to do with Sadat and Dharma. It's very admirable. I don't know many people out there that do something similar. What do you think? What motivations do you have to stay and continue and do things like this?
It's very easy. Truth. The value of Sanatan Dharma and the value of being able to live a peaceful and happy life is priceless. And I've seen that no amount of Western education, no amount of West income, no amount of society's support can give you these things that they come from inside. And the traditions of Sanatan Dharma really not just enculate these values, but uncover the real knowledge to integrate yourself. You know, there's a Vedic mantra that says, Ashta Chakra Naudwara Devanam Pura Yodhya. And this Ayodhya word means Na Yodhya Ayodhya, the place of no battles. And I think that mankind's biggest battle is with himself.
Yeah.
Inside.
Sure.
And through the practices of yoga and meditation and supported with the vibrations of Sanskrit, you're really able to reach that level of Ayodhya where you have the integration between your limited temporary existence and that Paramatma, that unlimited divine Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. And that, I think, is really ultimately the quest of life. The Shastras say Purusha Artha Chatushtayam, meaning Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha, Anam. And moksha, you know, isn't some kind of unattainable level of consciousness. It's really telling you mohase mukti, you know, free from delusion. And so being able to, and being able to see things as they are, bringing you again to that idea of the colorless crystal of the intellect, that is, rather than seeing things through the perspective of distorting colored lenses. So red lenses seeing yellow and understanding it as orange, and blue lenses seeing yellow, understanding is green, but the ability to see yellow for yellow, and also to see the redness over there and the blueness over there, and understanding why everything is as it is a very liberating experience. And that is the crux of a lot of the problems in the world in terms of communication, because it's not just about seeing the other's perspective, because you could also be seeing through distorted lenses. It's about being able to see the reality, then understanding why they have a distorted perception and why the other group of people have a distorted perception, and accepting it as it is rather than trying to change them.
Just the way you've described all of that, so fascinating, slightly esoteric, lots of big words, but I get it. I cognize, right? We all have our own strengths, unique views, talents that we bring to the world and try to shape the world around us. And it isn't until, and like you're saying, you get into some deep internal work to understand who you are, how you are, why you are, then you can go about viewing the world in a more cohesive manner, in a more pluralistic manner, something that one would argue is dharmic, one that upholds the entirety for the rest of us. And the unique lights, the leading lights we have in society that go and do that extra work and then go out and spread that message, I think are to be saluted, to be admired. And yeah, that's amazing. It's really great to hear some of that stuff.
That's really the question that took me into that meditation group that day when everything changed, was this big question, who am I? And not being able to find the answer, having gone to so many different healers and astrologists and everything. Nobody was able to answer that question. And it was like this light bulb moment that I remembered that guy that I'd met who had this meditation group and said that he knew me, which led me to go back there. And then my answer to who am I came in this sense of completeness, and at the same time, this unlimitedness.
That's amazing. And lots of wisdom there, I think, to unlock. And for anyone listening at home, if you want to chime in or let us know what you think or have further questions, please do email in podcast@vicharmanthan.org. Divyaji, I've got lots more questions to ask you, but I think we're going to enter that rapid fire round, and I'm sure you've heard some of the podcast before, so are expecting what's about to come. Divyaji, what goes into your perfect breakfast smoothie?
Blueberries.
Just blueberries?
Oh, the whole thing.
Well, what's the recipe, right?
apple juice, blueberries, and mint.
Okay, interesting. I haven't tried that one. I'll give it a go. If you were stranded on a deserted island, what 3 items would you take with you and why?
My mala, the Bhagavad Gita, and the third one, I'm not quite sure what I would take, because I feel pretty complete with my mala and my Bhagavad Gita, and my
Sure.
mali, I guess, to put the mala in.
Accessories. Fine. What's the greatest piece of advice anybody has ever given you?
When I was at university, I went back to my housemaster from the second boarding school I went to, and I told him that I wanted to give back my the education that they'd given me and give it back in the form of a teacher. And he very wisely told me to wait. He said, go and do a career first and then be a teacher. And really, I mean, he was so right, because by going off and doing that career enabled me to get the financial independence that I'm not reliant personally on anybody. I earn nothing from our projects and try to do as much as I can by myself. And not only have I, been a teacher, but I've been able to, through my friends and through what I earned, to build schools in their entirety.
That's amazing. There are some life lessons like that. You just the way they come out and set you up and are so esoteric in their wisdom. It's great. It's a pleasure to hear. If you could have one superpower, what would it be?
Knowledge of truth.
I normally get like flying or we'll accept
These
yours.
are normal things for meditation, right?
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. Something that's fascinated me, I don't know if you know much about this, but the ability to levitate.
Oh, yeah.
People have complete mastery over their physical body and are in tune with nature around them, that they can levitate. And to the layman, that just sounds absurd.
But if you think about it carefully, it's so simple. So you've got the gravitational force to Earth, right? Mm-hmm. But when you gravitate to the divine,
okay,
then you lift up.
Okay.
So when your attachment to the physical nature is less than your attachment to the divine, you lift up. And this is something that, this levitating thing is something that Guruji was very clear about, for us not to use our energy to do that and just to attain the higher states of samadhi. But the Swami Yogananda, who has been teaching me since Brahmarishi Vishwatma Bhavaraji left the body, he one day in his room didn't sit in the lotus pose, Padmasana, properly. And suddenly he came to with a smack on the forehead. And what had happened was his body had shot across the room because he hadn't locked in properly to Padmasana. So instead of going up, he shot forward.
Wow. Okay.
So this is something that, we are aware of.
But it's not a magic trick. It's not something you're supposed to just sort of show people, I can float. It's a deep internal harnessing of power, etc.
Yeah.
Look at me. And also, look at me talking like I know what I'm talking about.
But there was another story that it connected to this, is that Guruji was with a saint in Varanasi on the bank of the Ganga, and the saint was showing him that he could walk on water. And Guruji said to him, what's the point of using all of your sadhana to do that, when I can, for 2 rupees, sit in the boat and cross the Ganga? So,
there is a realism. We must apply some realism to this. What is actually needed, essential, for
what makes a difference?
Yeah. Totally agree. Okay, let's switch gears. What does sustainability mean to you?
sustainability.
And I use that word loosely. It's sort of like the way I am able to transcribe what dharma means in a Western context. But dharma is so much more.
Well, and yet part and parcel. For me, the Vedas are the ultimate source of sustainable knowledge. And when you reach a level of consciousness where there's the honing of discrimination, of knowing what to do and what not to do beyond the level of animal living, then you're really talking about ultimate sustainable living. Because when you've got individual consciousness, then it's an individual choice that I'm not going to use the plastic bag. I'm going to use my cotton bag that I've brought with me.
Sure.
But that's on an individual level. But when you have that expanded level of consciousness where there's that integration with your real self, which is unlimited, then you are thinking not just on an individual level, but your actions are reflecting the collective consciousness. You know, if you think about breath, I'm sitting in India and you're sitting in the UK, but yet we're taking the same breath, because the breath that we're taking is coming from one unlimited source that is the same whether it's in India or in the UK or in the USA or in Russia or wherever it may be on planet Earth. There's no demarcation of breath. There's one breath, and we're all taking that one breath, all of us, and every moment of time. And that is the measure of individual life. And that, when you understand that that one breath is one, then you're talking about sustainability on a whole new level, because your level of consciousness is aware of the consequences of your actions, not just for you as an individual, because you can do lots of things that are good for you on an individual level that would appear to be sustainable, but they have consequences for another.
Yeah.
And so that level of consciousness that comes through Dharma sees the bigger picture, has that awareness of the bigger picture. And that, I think, is really when you have real sustainability, where you go beyond the them and us.
Yeah. You've painted it so much better than I'd be able to. But it's when I no longer see you as the other, or I no longer see other, we are all one. Then the actions, the behavior, the way in which I act upon this world aren't just for me and my pleasure or security or whatever it might be. It's for the greater good. It's for the rest of society. Yeah, you definitely painted it better than me.
And, you know, and then that also brings you to being in the here and the now and having the acceptance of your position, because you will do what you're supposed to do in this life. And when you have it, that bigger context, it's seeing the 10 fingers on your hands and seeing that you're just one of the 10. And it's important to play your role to the best of your ability.
Yep.
Even the Gita says that, you know, that Swadharma is more important than the idea of Samaj Dharma.
Okay.
So playing our role together.
Yeah, do your duty, be the best you can be. I've said this before many times. The best I can do for you is be a better me. So if I'm doing everything within my resolve, if I'm growing myself personally, professionally, for societally, then I will act in the best possible way for everyone, or at least I should be.
Yeah, absolutely. And that really takes you to the Sanskrit meaning of the word Hindu that you can uncover. Hinsa yaha duhyate yasya hridayam itisa Hindu. That person has no violence in their heart and their mind to another. That is a Hindu. Wow. And so violence, can be in the form of competitiveness, greediness, so many different aspects. And, it's not a religious title, it's a level of consciousness that it refers to.
Beautiful. What a beautiful way to express what a Hindu is. And I think in today's day and age, there is so much change going on with labels and redefining terms that's something I think we all need to hear. So thank you for sharing that. Let's do a couple more quick questions, and then we'll roll back in to the main session. Can you tell me about a moment in your life where, and you probably have a few of these, where your paradigm shifted, where your entire worldview, I think you've described a few already, but maybe another one.
Oh, that's a tough one, because the very first time I went to the meditation group, that was a real eye opener. What happened there was that after the meditation, they went round the room and asked everybody what they experienced. And what was extraordinary to me was that the woman sitting next to me said the same thing that I had experienced. And I thought I'd just gone to sleep and had a nice, pretty dream.
Okay.
And I was utterly shocked to realize that she had experienced this same 100% exactly the same experience to me, which led me to think about, what is this? This is something that I wasn't expecting. I always imagined that meditation was for special people, and I certainly wasn't one of them that was these elevated beings that could meditate. And so that was a big thing. After that second experience in meditation, where I had that complete sense of completeness, and then a few weeks after that, another thing that really set my life on course was I said to Swamiji, so what am I going to do? What's my savor? And the meditation group was full of people like psychologists and Ayurvedic doctors and nurses and homeopaths, all these kind of people. And I didn't have any of this training. I was trained as a financial person. And
on the trading floor.
Yeah, and I could see that was going to be that was useless for me in life, relatively. And so I said, so what am I going to do? And he said, well, what do you like doing most? And I said, well, you know the answer to that, meditation. Brilliant. He said, got your answer yet? And so that was a big eye opener, that I could just be me. Right. I didn't have to do anything else except for do what I love, which is meditation. And then everything else hasn't really been that much of a change. It's just been a gradual uncovering of deeper and deeper knowledge. Those were the big jolts in life.
Nice. Very nice to hear. Okay. What's your favorite book?
Bhagavad Gita.
Of course. I knew you were going to say that.
But if you want more, I would say the Upanishads after that.
Okay.
I mean, every Upanishad is absolutely magical.
Yeah. There's a podcast episode called The Hindu Library that we did with Siddhartha Ji Krishna.
Oh, yes.
So we talk at some detail about some of those, but actually, and this is an exclusive for everyone listening in today, we're going to be launching a new series of the Hindu Library, and we're going to dive deep into each scripture, each Upanishad, each Veda, and hopefully uncover more. So do look out for that if you're tuning in. Divya Ji, let's do one last one. And I typically ask my guests to commit to something that makes them more sustainable. But I'm not going to ask of you, because you are already doing fantastic work in the Samaj and out in India. So if you had to give advice to someone else who is on their journey on the quest for truth, and they had to make a commitment, what one thing would you say to them? What one place could one start?
I would tell them to commit themselves to their mantra. Mananat Trayati iti mantra. Mantra being that energy that protects you from the cogitations of the mind. And so whilst the beginning mantra takes a lot of effort to practice, it also eventually becomes as easy as riding a bicycle. So in the same way, in the beginning, when you learn to ride a bicycle, you do it with full concentration. But after a very, very short period of time, you are riding looking backwards whilst you go forwards. You're riding along as you talk to your friend on the left-hand side or the right-hand side, and even letting go of the handles. And in the same way that if you have that mantra, that divine energy with you, it will always hone your focus and keep you connected to that which is permanent, keeping you on the right track, which is yourself.
Wow. And for those that maybe don't know where to get a mantra from, is there an easy one they can start with, or
the best Om?
just Om?
Because Om is described in the Vedas as an Udgit Shabda, a naturally uplifting sound. And if you look at it linguistically and hold your hand on your throat and go, oh, you'll see that your throat is struck by the and the u at the lips and the ong up in the nasal passages. And so you can see very easily that when it's externally enunciated, it's naturally uplifting your energy. So taking you across that ocean of consciousness, crossing the mind ultimately. And that also works on the subtle levels as well, and the causal. So it takes you back to yourself, integrates you with yourself, and helps you to get back to keeping your breathing normal and get you to that one pointedness so that you always know what to do in every moment. So it doesn't mean that you can't do your normal everyday work. What it means is that you do your everyday work more efficiently, painlessly.
I think you've hit the nail on the head there. This whole sort of spiritual journey and Sanatan Dharma and you know, the color that is everything that happens within Hinduism, Western term, is not about making you do something or follow a ritual or subscribe to a religion of the man. It's equipping you with tools and processes and powers to navigate the world that you go through. So when you do come across challenges, it's not like you don't know what to do. You are absolutely equipped with whatever outcome may come, and you will still be fine as a result of it.
Absolutely. The Bhagavad Gita gives a beautiful shloka describing this. It says, Dhyato Vishayan Punsa Sangaste Shubhajayate Sangat Sanjayate Kama Kamat Krodho Bhajayate Krodat Bhavati Sammoha Sammoha Smriti Vibrahmaha Smriti Brahmashada Bhuttina Sho Bhuttina Shat Pranashyati. So in these two shlokas of the Bhagavad Gita, Shri Krishna is telling you that there are 7 stages of downfall for man. And it starts by concentrating on the external objects, which leads to Sangha. So that leads to the desire for those objects. And irrespective of fulfilled or unfulfilled desire, that leads to anger. Anger leads to forgetting who you are, which leads to the destruction of your intellect, which leads to the destruction of you. And so if you read the Bhagavad Gita very carefully, it's actually giving you a very clear psychological journey of how to keep yourself balanced, how to pranapano samam kritva, keeping the balances of the prana inside you focused on your goal of life, which ultimately is that freedom from delusion. And if you look at karate teachers or judo teachers, what do they tell you? They say you never lose your temper, always keep your cool.
Yep.
And this is what the Gita is telling you way before, and there were karate coaches, is that, and it takes it beyond that, it's already too late when you've got to that losing your temper. And it's telling you how to get to that position where you'd never lose your temper. And that's by having this focus, redirecting your desires to that which is permanent. So you can do that with a mantra, but at the same time, moving like a tortoise does moving the limbs in and out as needed. And so it is completely practical about how to keep your balance.
Awesome. So for the listeners at home, if you find yourself in a tough spot, you feel like you're about to lose your temper, or you're getting angry, or there are some emotions coming up that you might not be able to sort of withstand and control, take a deep breath, say a few orms, give your arms and legs a stretch, maybe a couple of star jumps, get their body shape moving, and I guess just trust back in the universe that everything that's happening is happening for a reason, and if you follow your dharma, things will pan out for the best. Look at me giving life advice.
You know, when I left the city, it seemed like a disaster in most people's opinions, but for me, it was the best thing that could have happened.
Excellent.
You know, and so always take, you know, a step back and trust yourself, because that really is the one thing you can trust.
Very nice. So I think we've ended the rapid fire round a little while ago. We've just merged into the rest of the episode, where it's always a pleasure to speak to you. Got a couple more questions then before we wrap up. I think we've been talking a lot about sort of dharma and the types of things that you're teaching to the kids out in India. I guess my question is, why is something like dharmic education important?
If education is a very misunderstood word, education actually has two Latin roots. One is educare, which is education as we understand it in normal schools today, putting lots of knowledge in. But there is another word, which, forgive me if the pronunciation is wrong, but it's educere or educere. So that's EDUCERE as opposed to ARE. And this second meaning of education is actually about bringing out which is already in. And so that takes us back to the ancient education system in India, where the yogic tradition was to realize yourself, to know who you are, and then do all of the studies on top of that. So when we talk about dharmic education, we're talking about uncovering the individual towards the universal and giving the tools for that, and then giving them the modern set understanding of the word education by having that dharmic foundation, knowing who they are, knowing what they're supposed to do in life, and having that santosha, that satisfaction in every moment, no matter what. Because everything, education, modern education is given for what reason? To get a career. Why is it important to have a career? To make money. Why is it important to make money? To survive. So that is basically is telling you that education is geared at developing the external sadhan, the external means for peace and happiness, when really that means is within you itself, and those are periphery. Wow. So it's about developing that within first, and then giving you those periphery tools to navigate through nature.
Do you think that the Western world could learn something from this educational framework?
Oh, absolutely. Because that's what everybody is struggling with, about having that sense of peace and being settled with where you are in life, and not understanding why that person's got more than me, why that person's got a bigger house than me, and that person's got a smaller house than me. And understanding that these aren't the things that will make you feel okay, because everyone just wants to feel okay. That's the bottom line.
I agree. We are all, if we're not on a search for the truth, we at least want peace. We want to know that what we're doing in the world is good and right, and I'm happy and I'm content. But I think what you're saying here is these tools can be taught at a young age. and therefore the quest is maybe not easier, but maybe more fulfilled later on in life?
I think, to a degree, it is easier because there's less of a build-up of the modifications of the mind. If we talk on a mental level, two particular experiences in my life have stood out. One was with a 2-year-old child who'd been coming with their mother and grandmother to yoga classes, and I asked her one day, what do you see when you close your eyes? And she said, I see the moon. And she made the fingers showing like a full moon all over her head. So she was like seeing this light of the moon, she understood. And another child, aged 6, was looking at a slideshow that I was teaching them with about English verbs. And so I'd show them a picture and I'd go, what's he doing? What's she doing? And they'd say cooking, eating, sitting. And then there was a picture of someone meditating. And I said, what's she doing? Thinking that someone's going to go meditating. But this little boy stuck up his hand and said, she's seeing the sun.
Oh,
so,
wow.
Yeah. And that was really magical. And that reinforced my passion for bringing this to little kids, because when you've got that as a little child, then it helps them navigate through the teenage years, through university years, helping them to be free of that angst that is very common for teenagers. What degree am I going to do? What subjects are going to study?
It's a growing problem. Like growing up, fair enough, I had a view that I was going to go into IT. It's one of my callings. I have a few verticals in life that I subscribe to. But for a lot of people, you're right. It's, what do I study? What do I do? What do I want to be when I grow up? There's a lot of pressures. And I think the word used was angst. Kids these days are anxious. They just don't know where they place themselves in the world. Do we think a regular meditation class could help that?
I do, and combined with pranayama, really, because thought and breath are twins. So helping them to control their breath will give them a better experience in meditation, and also give them a basic tool, for example, when there's the onset of anger or distress, shock, even simple things like, why is that person not wanting to be my friend? Having that sense of I'm okay as I am, and realizing that I'm my own best friend. It's great to have more friends around, but realizing that my friends will be my real friends.
That's beautiful. Be your own best friend. Fall back in love with yourself. And I think kids have that. Kids really have that worked out until they meet the harsh realities of the world, where, for example, one child doesn't want to be your friend at school and that kind of thing. So lots of life lessons to be had.
It's very tough,
But it's supposed to be, right? A calm sea never made a strong sailor.
Then that's something that I've come to realize as well about the makeup of life recently, is because in the last few years, both my parents have passed on. And I, at one point, was sitting down thinking, what an extraordinary world this is, because the bond a child has with their parents is a very, very strong bond. And naturally, the natural law of nature is that parents will die before the children, more often than not. And the child is left with this gaping hole of their parents no longer being around.
A gravity
this is
unknown.
A big challenge. Yeah, it's a huge challenge. And I was thinking, and yet this is an inbuilt aspect of nature.
Yep.
So why is that? And I realized that's the challenge for you to understand the permanent as opposed to the impermanent, challenging you to look beyond the limits of their individual existence.
It's true. It's so true. And death is paramount. It's inevitable. We all go through that circle of life. And like even for myself, I experienced the death of my father. And since then, anyone that's passed away, obviously it's not going to have the same impact. Father is quite close to you. But it's this understanding that it's a part of life. Yes, there are emotions. And I think we were talking about it earlier, attachments. You have this more to life and to how you think it's all supposed to be, right? We paint a picture of what we think life is or perfectionism looks like. And then when it's rotted or tainted or the ink didn't come out in the right way and this picture looks totally different, sometimes we're upset. And why are we upset? Because the expectation we set ourselves didn't materialize to be true. And the world gave us a harsh reality of what life is really like. And I use the word harsh. I guess it's not harsh. It's just our growth comes from those.
But it does feel it at the time. And something that I felt also in life is that if I wasn't willing to leave it myself through discrimination, it was just going to be snatched away. Because of the way my life is, there's just no point to holding on to these things, but to move with the flow of life and the journey of life. As the Upanishads say, that life it's just that river flowing between the banks of birth and death.
I like that. And I think we're getting quite deep now, Divya Ji, into all things esoteric and death and life and the meaning of it all. So let's rein it back in. I think it's been a great pleasure to speak to you. We need to do this again. There's so much more that we can learn from yourself, and the life and times of Divya Prabha is what I think I'm calling this podcast episode. But are there any parting thoughts you would like to share with our listeners who are navigating themselves through the quest of life, going to work, raising families, doing the best they can? Is there some wisdom you can embark upon us that will leave us somewhat satisfied or pacified or put us in a better mood?
We've all got this incredible tool called discrimination. And it's that discrimination that can allow us to do or not to do it. And it's what differentiates us from animal life. And if you look at animals, if you've got a hungry dog, you can put the stalest food in front of it, or even worse, and it will snap it up and eat it all. And when their stomach's full, you can put their favorite food in front of them and they just sniff it and wander away to something else that they would rather smell instead, thinking of dogs in particular. But human life is very different in that if we are starving hungry and we have stale food put in front of us, we have the ability to decide whether we're going to eat that food or we're going to think about when the possibility of fresh food would be and take a decision based on holding off eating to eat something of better quality or not. We're not driven by the hunger itself. And in the same way that, say, your mother has just given you a fabulous meal and then she gets out some sweets, Indian sweets, and she says, who wants some sweets? And you go, oh, no, I'm really full. I've had enough. That food was great, Mom. And she goes, oh, just have one. And you, oh, right, then I'll have one. Yeah. And so you take one, even though you're completely full. And this is the discrimination that enables you to go beyond the limitations of nature for a particular means according to your choice. And this is an incredibly powerful tool. And we can use it wisely. It will get us through life, that's for sure. And that is what enables us to follow a dharmic life as opposed to an animal life.
Beautiful. Keep separating truth from untruth. Use that discriminatory power and you will progress. Very nice. Very beautifully put. Thank you very much, Divya Ji, for coming on to the VM podcast. I've certainly learned a lot. Hopefully our listeners have learned some and want some more. Hopefully we'll get you back. For anyone out there that doesn't follow Divya Ji or isn't aware of some of her work, please go look her up online. She's co-founded a Gurukul called the International Chandramauli Charitable Trust based in Varanasi, where the protection and promotion of Sanatan Dharma and Bharatiya Sanskrit with Vedas and Shastras are taught as a way of life. And I think we should all be celebrating and contributing to such causes. It's very, very admirable. This was the VM podcast. My name is Sumit Sharma. Hopefully we'll have you tune in to another episode. Namaste.